Meanwhile, the proposed 2 percentage point of VAT increase has sparked debate about priorities in the national budget, raising important questions about how South Africa can raise revenue to support its developmental goals. The Institute for Economic Justice says the postponement of the budget presents an opportunity for the Treasury to reconsider its fiscal approach. Earlier, I caught up with the Institute's tax and budget researcher, Zimbali Mncube, for more insight.
For us, I think we should be looking more holistically at the budget and fiscal policy as a whole. We've seen that historically the National Treasury has chosen to cut the budget and allocations to essential services in order to stabilize debt, right? And so now the discussion is shifting because it's becoming politically unfeasible to continue cutting expenditure, to say what revenue measures are possible or what options are possible. But we are saying that the budget as a whole needs to be seen as a tool to help us tackle poverty and inequality and transform the economy. And that entails looking at not only the budget, but more broadly, how monetary policy can also come into the fore and how we can drive structural transformation.
And I imagine if we drill into all of that, we would have to have about a 2-hour conversation at least. Let's drill into really the contentious issue here, which is the VAT increase proposal. Just taking a look at, one of the measures that Treasury is or might be using to increase revenue. Could this be, though, the most damaging measure to economic growth?
Yeah, I mean, in the context of low growth, we think that this measure will particularly be harmful to poor and low-income households, right? Because it will affect their buying power. And I think we should be also looking at history and evidence, because South Africa has recently increased the VAT, right? But it raised 22 billion below what was expected. And part of that is linked to the current economic climate and the economic climate at the time. We know that if households and businesses are experiencing, or rather in an economy that is experiencing low growth, they'll be reluctant to spend on the economy, right? And so that means that the revenue that you are likely to see, even from a VAT increase, will be poor. And so those are the measures that we think should be considered or should have been considered before this was proposed.
Well, I did notice that in your note you say maybe a VAT hike may not be necessarily a bad thing, but maybe, unless it is obviously focused on particular goods. Just talk to me about that, what you would suggest in terms of maybe not really implementing an across-the-board increase there.
Yeah, I think our proposal is informed by trying to use fiscal policy to target individuals and entities that we think will be progressive, in the sense that they raise revenue from those that are earn a high income. And so our proposal is a luxury VAT, which particularly targets the purchase of goods for those that are regularly purchased by high income earners, right? And this would be levied at 25% and would likely to be generating about 9 billion annually if it was going to be implemented.
Yeah. And just talking about actually taxing the wealthy, because there also has been an option put forward of implementing a wealth tax, but we've also had a number of market participants really highlighting the risks that would come from this. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think this conversation has been ongoing for a while, as you know, since the Davis Tax Committee. But we're saying that we should be looking at it as one of the measures in these different proposals we've put forward, because it stands to raise potential revenue up to 160 billion, right? Which is much needed in the current context. And I think some concerns have been raised to say that people will fly away, or they will go offshore, or
Yeah.
won't pay taxes, those concerns, which I think are valid. But I think in part, what we also call for is capacitating SARS and ensuring that SARS can collect revenue,
Yes.
but also enforce tax compliance. So that will play a role in ensuring that we target those individuals correctly. We also call for the implementation of capital controls, ensuring that we try to stabilize the flow of currency in and out of the country. So that is going to be essential as one of the supporting mechanisms to mitigate against those risks.
Well, another interesting thing, option that you have come up with is getting more funds from GFECRA. I think we got that in the last budget, but how much room is there for us to still be dipping into that kitty?
Yeah, I think from the latest budget, there's still about 340 billion in the GFECRA. And as we've shown from our analysis, it's a money that is available to the government and which it can use to generate supply and demand in the economy. So in the long run, it should be used to support economic growth. And there's still room because given that recently the government only drawed upon 150 billion, right, to pay down debt. And so we're saying that there may be a time to actually consider what other productive uses can this money generate without obviously exhausting those funds, but still leaving a buffer for the country.
It's quite clear that we do need to raise revenue. At this point, the DA has said no to tax hikes. And I'm wondering if it is sustainable for us to completely stay away from any sort of tax hikes.
Yeah, I think it's not sustainable because if we're not increasing taxes, particularly progressive taxes, which we've just discussed now, it means we have to go for cuts, right? And usually the easiest places to cut are, in frontline services. So we're speaking teachers. Some of the proposals that the DA has put forward targets teachers and so on. But we're not sure what evidential basis is relied upon to actually inform where to cut, because as it stands, we need teachers, especially in township and rural schools.
Yeah.
We're currently seeing that the ratio of teacher to learner and class sizes is very, very disappointing. Even in healthcare, doctors over 1.8 thousand doctors were unemployed in the past year, and Aaron Mutwaledi has to discuss like where would these cuts come from. And I think this current moment presents an opportunity not just for political parties to dictate that, but for it to be open as a dialogue for citizens to also contribute, because we are the ones who use these services.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much for those insights, Zimbali. Really, really appreciate it. That was Zimbali Mncube, tax and budget researcher for the Institute for Economic Justice.